The AR-15 bolt carrier group, the bolt assembly, is a complicated piece of equipment. And honestly, it shocks me that something as complicated looking as the bolt on the AR-15 is as reliable as they are. I'm impressed by it because just looking at it, it looks like they shouldn't be reliable. It looks like those things should be prone to jamming up somehow. But thankfully, that's not the case. As long as you keep them well oiled. The AR-15 bolt likes to be run wet and well lubricated. You've got to keep it well lubricated, well oiled. You have to know just where to oil it and how to oil it. It's not that complicated, but you have to know what you're doing. So I'm going to show you just where you oil the bolt on the AR-15, how much oil to put on it, and how often you need to oil it. I'm Jordy Buck, and this is Michigan Sharpshooters, helping you become well regulated, so together we can preserve our freedoms. The first thing I gotta do is take it apart. So let me push out my pins. Alright, so we've got this puppy apart. Let me pull the bolt out. There. Got the bolt on my AR. See? The whole bolt assembly, bolt carrier group, or just bolt. I don't have to get technical. Now, this thing is technical and tricky on where you oil it. I want you to pay good attention to this, alright? I want you to really closely watch where I oil this thing. I'm going to pull the front of it out, the face of that bolt that moves in and out. Pull it out because I want to get oil on there. And here's the tricky, complicated part. Ready? Did you see what part I oiled that? What part did I oil? The whole darn thing. Well, pretty darn much. It's not tricky or complicated. A little messy. But the whole darn thing, for the most part, deserves a decent little bit of oil on it. The only parts you don't want to get oil into, if you can help it, is the firing pin channel, which is on the front part in here. The bolt face. You get that star-shaped bolt face. On the front of that, little hole in the middle. That's where the firing pin comes out of. Try not to get much oil in there. You don't really want much of it in there. You get much oil in there and you're going to tend to have to take this thing apart and clean it out a lot more. You can get a sticking oil pin. You can get a sticking firing pin, and you don't want that. The other part I don't need oil in is this little hole in the bottom. This little piece on the bottom of the bolt. This little hollow tube. I don't really need to spray oil in there. Other than that, everything is fair game. Whether you're going to spray it down like I did, just run it in wet, get it nice and wet, work it in a little. Whether you're going to spray it down, whether you're just going to drip oil on, whether you're just going to rub an oily rag on it, oil the whole thing. Just try not to get oil right into that firing pin. Right into that firing pin channel and into that tube in the bottom. Working around a little bit. Yeah, these things like to be run nice and wet. In fact, if it gets dry, it tends to stop working quite often. A dry AR bolt is the cause of a lot of jamming and malfunctions. In fact, one of the main fixes, if your bolt starts to stick while you're out shooting it, is just spray it down with some oil or coat it down heavy with some oil. Put this thing back together now. So there isn't anything that tricky about oiling the bolt. What you do want to do, like I mentioned, is try not to get oil in that firing pin chamber or in that gas tube on the bottom of the bolt itself. Now, if you're running your AR and it does start to jam up a little, open that up there. Right in here, grab your oil, whether you're using a spray or whether you're using just drip oil, just dripping it out of a can, whatever. Just spray it in there good. And it's okay to use too much. It's okay to use too much. Work it in a little. I even like to, now and then, open it up. I got that bolt locked back, and I'll just spray a bit. Too much is fine, especially with this stuff, this Birchwood Casey Barricade. It's a really thin, lightweight oil. It doesn't really hurt the paint at all, and it doesn't really hurt wood stock, something like that. It runs into the crevices really well. It's a nice thin oil, really clean stuff. So spray it in there. It's fine to put too much in, really, because it's just going to drip out. Just try not to spray it right into the firing pin channel or into the gas tube on the bottom of the bolt. Work it in a little. And honestly, that'll clear up a lot of your malfunctions and jams that you can have out at the range when you're running these things and they start to get dirty. Excuse me. The reason why that works so well when your gun starts to get dirty isn't just because you're loosening it up by putting oil in it, but because the oil works to displace all the junk and the dirt and the grime that's accumulated in the rifle. That oil, spray it in there nice, and as I work it around, just like if I'm loosening a rusty bolt, I'll spray a lot of oil on it, dump a lot of oil on it, work it back and forth a little bit, and I'll watch rust be drawn out from the threads on that bolt and come right out into the oil. So heavy oil is honestly great for that situation. If you're running your AR and it just starts to slow down or jam up a little just because it's getting a bit dirty, generally every time you can remedy that short term just by coating it down heavy with oil. It gets everything nice and wet. That oil works to displace a lot of the built up grime and junk in the chamber and in the bolt face, and loosens it up, kind of flushes it out a little, and you can keep rolling. Now, that doesn't replace actually cleaning it, of course. You still need to actually clean your gun when it gets dirty. But sometimes you can get away temporarily just by throwing a lot of extra oil into it. So that's it for where and how to oil the bolt on an AR-15. Pretty much everywhere except for the firing pin channel and for the gas tube on the bottom of the bolt. Thanks for watching Michigan Sharpshooters. I hope you found this video useful. And if you did, I'd appreciate it if you click the like button, because that'll help me and YouTube get these videos out to you more. Thanks. Bye now.